Hi, everyone. We'll get started here in just a minute as people roll in, and we'll kick off the program in just a moment. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Able Today and Autism Speaks national webinar. My name is Josh Cobbs. I'm the Director of Employment Initiatives with Autism Speaks. We're so excited to have you here to learn more about ABLE accounts, workplace inclusion now, and creating inclusive workplaces. And we look forward to sharing great resources from the team at Able Today and Autism Speaks. Lastly, we're going to start with ABLE accounts and what they are, how to access them, all those great things that you might have heard the buzzwords of what is this ABLE account or how do I access? Sarah and her team are going to take care of answering those questions and information. And then towards the end of the program, we'll wrap up information from Autism Speaks about welcoming inclusive workplaces. And now I'm proud to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Sarah Hartware.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of ABLE Today and the ABLE Network, we're really excited about today's webinar. I'm Sarah Hartware. I'm a senior advisor with ABLE Today, as well as serve as the executive director of the Kansas Council on Developmental Disabilities, and we'll be helping facilitate, along with Josh, today's webinar. Before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping items. We will record today's webinar and make it available on our websites for those that weren't able to participate in person, and then for you all to go back and access this important information about workplace inclusion and ABLE accounts. So that will be posted at our abletoday.org website. We look forward to providing and emailing this information out following today's webinar. Throughout the course of the webinar, as Josh mentioned, we're going to talk about the power of the National ABLE program. What is an ABLE account? How do you use that ABLE account? My colleague and friend Betty Ann Mobley from Maryland ABLE is going to talk about how ABLE can be utilized as a workplace benefit and how you can work with ABLE Today and the ABLE Network to further your education and initiatives surrounding ABLE in the workplace. And then the team from Autism Speaks is going to talk more about all of the endless opportunities and work that they do around workplace inclusion now, and specifically their WIN program. Very excited about that. Just a little bit of background information about ABLE Today. Our mission is really simple. We launched ABLE Today about almost 2 years ago. It's hard to believe. We are part of the National Association of State Treasurers, the NAST Foundation more specifically. And our mission is very simple. It's to promote ABLE accounts, financial empowerment, and community inclusion for people with disabilities. Really speaks volumes to what we are here doing this afternoon, and so grateful to have all of you join us as part of this webinar series. We launched ABLE Today again 2 years ago, and we're very grateful for the generous support that allows us to provide this free education from the Wells Fargo Foundation. This is one of my favorite slides, and for those of you that are learning about ABLE for the first time, or you've joined us to learn more information about how ABLE accounts can be utilized day in and day out for individuals with disabilities, for caregivers and family members. We have a long history, specifically I've worked with Josh in the Autism Speaks community for a very long time. to help really get the original ABLE Act across the finish line, which landed on President Obama's desk on December 19th, 2014. Autism Speaks was at the forefront of helping lead the effort to get the original ABLE Act passed, and subsequently a number of the new provisions that have improved the original statute. As we've pointed out time and time again, you know, ABLE really enjoys wide bipartisan support, and when the original ABLE Act was passed, had 85% of the entire Congress support a tax bill for people with disabilities that can really improve their future. These are just a number of our favorite initiatives, and you know, have to give credit where credit's due with all of the hard work that Autism Speaks helped get us to this point. Which is my second favorite slide of our ABLE Today presentation, and that really is the overall ABLE landscape that you see in front of you. Today, as we sit here this afternoon in April of 2024, we have 46 states plus the District of Columbia that are offering ABLE programs, and Stacy and Betty Ann are going to talk more specifically about how to access and find information about your state's ABLE program, and why researching your in-state ABLE program is so vitally important to the individual with a disability. Stacy, you're going to talk about that here momentarily. We also have some incredible data as we've seen growth in the overall ABLE program. The first ABLE account opened up in June of 2016 in the state of Ohio. And currently, again, as we sit here this afternoon, we have over 163,000 ABLE accounts. We have 8 million people eligible. So doing educational opportunities like this are so important to raising the awareness of the ABLE program. And in those 163,000 ABLE accounts, we have 1.74 billion, it's billion with a B, in assets under management, to a relatively new program that's been around for essentially the last 8 years. We track a lot of this data through the National Association of State Treasurers, and our state partners like Maryland and like Nebraska are really collaborative in allowing us to provide this information to stakeholders in the disability community, in the employer community, and really across the board. So I have the extreme pleasure of introducing really two of my favorite colleagues and friends that lead extraordinary ABLE programs in their state, but also are very, very active in our national network of ABLE programs, and really cross state lines all of the time to promote the ABLE program. And so my colleague and friend, Stacy Pfeiffer, who's the director of Nebraska's ABLE program, is going to present on general background on ABLE accounts. And then she's going to turn it over to Betty Ann, who's the director of Maryland ABLE, but also the vice chair of our ABLE network, to talk more specifically from an employer perspective, how you can leverage ABLE as a workplace benefit. So I'm going to stop there, Stacy. I'm going to turn it over to you to walk through this portion of the webinar.
Great. Thanks so much, Sarah. Like Sarah said, my name is Stacy Pfeiffer. I'm the director of the Nebraska ABLE program. We want to make sure that individuals, as well as employers and other partners, know about ABLE accounts and how to utilize them to help achieve their goals. Imagine a tool that allows people with disabilities to save money in their own names and more than just a $2,000 limit for Social Security. Being able to accumulate wealth without losing eligibility for benefits, and being able to work without having to spend down their current or future income. Imagine being able to focus on a lifetime financial plan instead of only being able to look at the current month. ABLE accounts can make all of these things possible. Next slide. So now I'm sure you're asking, what is an ABLE account? They're savings and investment tools built specifically for people with disabilities. They allow individuals to save money without impacting public benefits, up to a $100,000 limit. ABLE accounts are offered under Section 529A of the U.S. Tax Code. And it is important to note that while ABLE accounts do work with benefits, we operate within the Treasury, not within the Social Security Administration. Our plans work alongside benefits, not as part of them. Next slide. So now that you've learned a little bit more about what an ABLE account is, you might be wondering if you or anybody you know is eligible for these life-changing accounts. There are a few guidelines for eligibility. While there are some differences from state to state with ABLE plans, these guidelines are the same for every plan. First of all, you must have incurred the disability before the age of 26. You can open an account at any age as long as the disability began before the age of 26. While that age limit might be disappointing to some, we are happy to report that starting in January of 2026, the Able Age Adjustment Act will take effect. This will increase the age limit from 26 to 46 and will open the plans up to an additional 6 million more Americans. In addition to the person's age at the onset of a disability, the disability must also be long-term, which for our purposes means lasting longer than 12 months. And it must cause a marked or severe functional limitation. And if you have questions about whether or not your condition qualifies, you can check the Social Security Compassionate Allowances list. Once you've met those two criteria, you need one of the following two things. One, be eligible for Social Security or disability due to your disability, or have a disability diagnosis from a physician and a copy of that diagnosis. It is important to note that you don't have to be on Social Security or disability, as that's only one of the two options. And there are a couple reasons why you may still want to take advantage of ABLE accounts without being on Social Security or disability. There are tax advantages for account owners. And if you do need to access benefits later in life, your assets will already be protected, and it will make the transition that much easier for you. Next slide, please. All right, I mentioned earlier that those of us here today represent directors from all over the United States, or Sarah mentioned that earlier. That is because there are multiple ABLE plans. There are 46 states plus Washington, D.C. that have ABLE plans. We all encourage you to check your state first to see if they have a plan, and if so, what incentives the plan has for its residents. Some incentives may be offering state tax deductions or tax credits for residents, or some states offer plans with no annual maintenance fee for their residents. Some states offer nationwide plans, so you can research those plans as well. And we understand that everyone's situation is different and want people to educate themselves and pick the plan that works best for them. You can research all the different plans at abletoday.org/able-programs, and that's there on the slide for you. And there you can find a comparison tool for you to use. If you want to research plans a little more in depth, each plan would also have a program disclosure statement on their website. And if you've opened an account in one state and have moved or decided that you wanted to switch plans, you can roll it over into a different state's plan. Once you decide which state's plan you'd like to enroll in, you can enroll online, by paper, or in a bank branch, depending on the program. We're hoping that all of you can help us spread the word about these great plans and take this information back to groups that you are a part of. Your help is integral in getting the word out about these programs. There are still so many individuals struggling because they are not aware of these savings plans, and we want to make sure that we can do our part to end that. If an individual is not able to manage the account on their own, they can have someone to manage the account for them, whether it be a family member or another support person who has been appointed to assist them with their finances. Next slide. So while you're going through the enrollment process, you'll also need to decide how you will be investing the funds. Each plan offers different options. You're able to choose one option or spread funds across multiple options. Most plans offer both FDIC insured options and market-based investment options. Next slide. $18,000 is the annual contribution limit, which means that $18,000 is the maximum amount of money that can be contributed to an ABLE account each year from all sources. And that's the limit for 2024. This contribution limit does change. Gifting, payroll, any kind of money that comes into the account would be subject to that limit. There is an exception to the $18,000 limit if the individual with a disability is working and not contributing to an employer-sponsored retirement plan. They can participate in the Able to Work program and save up to a total of $30,590 in the 48 contiguous states in DC, $33,990 in Alaska, and $32,630 in Hawaii. It is important to note that an ABLE account is an asset shield, not an income shield. So as you participate in Able to Work or direct depositing of your paycheck, please do remember that this income will still be counted towards your income limit, but not your asset limit. It is also important to note that while there is a limit of $100,000 for purposes of receiving Social Security benefits, plans do have a higher limit. If Social Security is not a consideration for an individual, they can save around $400,000 in these accounts, depending on the plan. And those are lifelong limits. Next slide. So money can be spent in a variety of ways, depending on the plan you choose. Your options would vary. So checkbooks, debit cards, third-party checks, and bank transfers are some of the ways you'll be able to access your funds. Please check with your program administrator and the program disclosure statement for guidance on that, as that varies from plan to plan. Next slide. So what exactly can you spend this money on? Qualified disability expenses are incurred as a result of a disability and are intended to help maintain and improve health, greater independence, and quality of life. They include housing and rent, assistive technology, basic living expenses, financial management, oversight and monitoring, employment training and job coaching, transportation, healthcare, prevention and wellness, education, legal fees, funeral and burial costs, and personal support services. Lots of you may be thinking that these are some pretty broad categories, and they were created that way to allow for a wide range of expenses. The most important thing to remember for qualified disability expenses is to make sure you are keeping your receipts and good records of your qualified disability expenses. That way, if you were to ask about a specific expense, you would have clear backups to show how the expense was qualified. Now that we've discussed the basics of ABLE accounts, Betty Ann is going to talk about how employers can be a part of these great savings plans.
Thank you, Stacy. Next slide, Sarah. So I don't think when we stop and think about people with disabilities, we recognize the impact that they can have, the purchasing power that they have on employers and on the economy in general. Just take a look at some of these statistics here. We have 8 million people with disabilities that are eligible to have an ABLE account. And there'll be another 14 million that will, or 14 total that will be available once the Age Adjustment Act, which Stacy mentioned, in terms of increasing the age of onset from 26 to 46 takes place in January of 2026. Think about the income that we have as people living in society just to spend on things we want and love. That's our disposable income. But then we also have money that we put aside for our bills and things that we have to have in life. Well, the same applies to people with disabilities. And I don't think, again, that we truly understand, both as organizations, as employers, how much impact a person with a disability can have, and globally, how much impact people with disabilities can have. In addition to the people who have disabilities who may be eligible for an ABLE account, sometimes we don't recognize within our employer space that there are people who may have self-identified and may not have identified their disability, but there are also people who are supporting people with disabilities, people we may refer to as caregivers. And there's another 39.8 million of those folks who are currently out there supporting the folks with disabilities. So it's really important, while you may say, as a business in particular, I don't think we employ anybody with a disability. Remember, they may not have self-disclosed, or it may be that they are in fact the caregiver or support for somebody with a disability, that this is really important to share. And as an employer, we're always looking for what's going to give us that one step up, make us the most attractive employer. And think about that. This is something that we're going to share with you that can be added and a part of what you offer to employees that give you that step up as an employer, showing how much you care about people as people and their needs, and helping them to have a solid foundation in financial stability. So one of the things that Stacy mentioned is this opportunity to save up to $100,000 in our ABLE accounts and not have SSI impacted. SSI and SSDI are the two Social Security benefits that people who oftentimes have ABLE accounts are eligible for and may be receiving. In fact, 67% of our account holders are in that situation. Think about the fact that they've had limits, particularly on the SSI side, of only $2,000 in assets per month. And with an ABLE account, they have the opportunity now to save even more. In the past, it may have been challenging to encourage people with disabilities to work because the thought was, if I'm working, I can't save my earnings. I've got to spend it or I'm going to lose my benefits. And ABLE will open a whole new world for them. Next slide, please. Now, here's the really good news, is if we're talking about helping people to learn about ABLE from a work point perspective, a workplace perspective, this is zero cost to the employer. What we're able to do is provide electronic and in some cases paper versions from both ABLE Today and the state ABLE programs so that we can help to educate. We also, as ABLE Today, are available to do webinars like this with things within your organization, caregiver ERGs, and all your employees, just to share this information. And that's really what we're asking for, is to share the information. The other thing that's really important for you to know is when we talk about ABLE, many people with disabilities think, oh my gosh, another program, mounds of paper, a long time before I ever get approved, and how does this work for me? ABLE is a very different program from what folks with disabilities have been used to. I want to think about the fact that when we look at an ABLE program and getting an ABLE account or establishing an ABLE account, if you're doing that online, our account holders tell us it takes about 15 minutes. And that's all. So that's something that's really exciting and news to people who don't know about ABLE accounts from their past. If you think about being an employee and you're thinking about your future, you're thinking about retirement. And if you're a person with a disability, especially a person with a disability receiving SSI or maybe needing to worry about accessing other public asset tested benefits like SNAP and HUD and some of those other benefits, you have to recognize that any retirement savings is a counted asset. And that would maybe eliminate you from eligibility for those. In fact, if those monies that you wanted to save for your future are put into your ABLE account, they are a protected asset. So in essence, they've become an opportunity for retirement savings for people with disabilities without counting against asset limits for those means-tested benefits that are critical in their lives. Stacy also mentioned that many states offer tax benefits. Many states offer the opportunity for contributions to an ABLE account to result in some sort of tax deduction or subtraction that impacts the amount of taxes they pay within their state taxing income. So it's really another benefit to provide to people by just having an ABLE account. I also wanted to mention that there are also employer benefits by employing a person with a disability. There are different kinds of provisions for accommodations and reimbursement for accommodations that might be provided to employees, and other types of tax benefits to pursue as an employer who's employing people with disabilities. Stacy shared with you the fact that you can use an ABLE account for most anything. And the rule of thumb is those things that support a person with a disability in their health, independence, and quality of life. And while there isn't much we can come up with that doesn't fit in that, as long as it's used to support the person with the disability, and there's no pre-approval from the ABLE program to do that. It is incumbent upon the beneficiary, the account holder, and if they have someone who's assisting them to manage the account, to understand that. So let's think about work. Let's think about kinds of benefits you might have for work. Maybe you need some additional funding for transportation, or maybe you have a uniform, or if not a uniform, a kind of dress code at work and having to provide things in your wardrobe you wouldn't typically have. So in terms of expenses related to supporting a workplace, employment, these are the kinds of things that you can use your ABLE account for. Next slide, please. We're asking for workplaces to partner with us, our state plans and ABLE Today, to look at how we can continue to include people in the workplace. And that partnership looks like giving us the opportunity to come out, whether it's in person or via technology, to provide an education about what is an ABLE account and how to access ABLE accounts. It might also be something as simple as including information about ABLE accounts as part of the HR's onboarding process. You know, benefits can be very expensive to a company, an employer, but this is a benefit, an information sharing benefit that can have zero cost to you. We don't expect HR professionals within a company to be subject matter experts. Leave that to the states. Let us as ABLE programs support you and your employees in how they can access an ABLE account and what an ABLE account can do for them. Our plans offer direct deposits into ABLE accounts, so people who have a disability or people who are on an account supporting a person with a disability have the opportunity to have direct deposit of payroll. That prevents them from having to worry about having money in an outside account that accumulates over $2,000. So that can really help. The other thing that an employer can look at and can consider is taking the next step and actually doing some matching or contributions to an ABLE account. As Stacy was saying earlier, anybody can contribute to an ABLE account. So whether it's family, friends, now employer, you're on that list too. You can be someone who provides a contribution to an ABLE account, and there are many ways that you might do that. I want you to also think about what Stacy mentioned related to Able to Work and the opportunity for people to save above and beyond the $18,000 annual contribution limit. Over $10 million nationwide in assets under management has come just from people who are working, who are utilizing a benefit to be able to save more money. Again, maybe for retirement, maybe for today's everyday expenses. And approximately 3,200 people are using this feature. So those 3,200 people have been able to put over $10 million in their accounts to help them as they move forward. Next slide, please. So here's a great example. Able Today and Able have had a partnership with ODEP and SHRM, and we have put out to employers an opportunity to sign a disability inclusion pledge. And we have a number of employers who have taken that pledge to support people with disabilities to be included in the workspace. As a result of that, there are actions that need to come with the signing of that pledge. And we just talked about an employer match or contribution. That would be a reasonable action that an employer might take. And here's an example of an organization in Pennsylvania called Supportive Behavioral Resources. And they're providing a 2% match on account payroll contributions. So that's an amazing step to take related to helping an employee gain savings and investments for today and for their future. Another organization, Catalyst, is a company that does some matching for its employees who are making contributions. Now, it has to be an account that's opened either by the employee or by the person with the disability who's working for Catalyst. They have a max set. They have a $1,000 max for lifetime contributions, but they do that dollar for dollar match based on contributions when they reach $100, $500, and $1,000. So we want to make sure that as employers begin to envision, what can I do? How can I do this? Recognizing that a bonus given to a person with a disability becomes countable income and can impact benefits. But a direct contribution to an ABLE account may not count that way if it's directly deposited into the ABLE account. Next page, please. So how do you partner with us? There's all kinds of ways you can partner with us. First of all, Able Today has on its website the opportunity to learn about different ABLE plans. You can go on Able Today and you can click on a state and it's going to tell you information about the different state programs and share with you what their direct website is. So that's one way to explore. We also want you to help us spread the word. You know, we are constantly taken aback by how many people have never heard about ABLE. And our role today, and as we do these kinds of webinars, is to make sure as many people as possible across the country learn about ABLE. And we encourage people who attend our webinars to do just that in partnership with us. Share the word, whether it's with email, social media, on your network, or just when you're sitting down with your neighbor at the summer picnic that you're having. There may be people that you don't realize could really benefit from this. We also ask in your partnership that should you need our assistance, reach out to us. We're happy to work with you to provide a presentation to any group of people who may be interested to learn more. And here's a really cool thing that happened not too long ago. Able Today has started a podcast series, and they were able to interview people from Autism Speaks. You can see Josh is there, and Stuart Pittman from Autism Speaks, and Sarah and Mark Raymond with Able Today, and interview them about Autism Speaks and how that can work with Able accounts. So we encourage you to go on the Able Today website and listen to that podcast. Next slide, please. We also have a number of videos, resource materials, information about federal benefits, as well as things about our programs. So we really do encourage you to visit Able Today. Able Today is the only website that will provide you with resources to all of the Able programs connected to those of us like Stacy and myself who are running Able programs. So we really pride ourselves in having kind of that niche of the connection between the resources we provide and those of us who provide the programs and understand how those programs work. So with that, I'm going to turn this presentation over to Ariana and Darren with Autism Speaks. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Today we're going to be speaking and sharing a bit about workplace inclusion now. And please note the chat and question and answers are still open. The team will continue to answer questions throughout the presentation. And if you joined late, we are recording this and we'll send out information and resources as a wrap up and follow up after today's presentation. I'm Ariana Esposito. I'm the Vice President of Services and Supports for Autism Speaks, and I oversee our lifespan programs. You may be familiar with Autism Speaks. If you're not, our mission is dedicated to creating an inclusive world where all individuals with autism, inclusive world for all individuals with autism across their lifespan. And we do this through a couple of ways. One, just recently we mentioned our advocacy through supporting the passage of the ABLE accounts and our recent podcast with Stuart Spielman, who's our SVP of Advocacy. Services and supports, where we are the representatives from Autism Speaks reside, as well as research and innovation and advances in care for all autistic individuals and their families. And our vision is a world where all people with autism can reach their full potential. Next slide, please. We've fearlessly been standing with the autism community since 2005. Next year is a big year for Autism Speaks. We will turn 20 years old. For an organization like ours, it's a really major milestone, and it feels like we're just getting started. In 2005, when we were founded, the incidence of autism was a little bit higher than 1 in 125, and now today we're looking about 1 in 36 school-age children are diagnosed with autism. Over the years and over the 20 years, almost 20 years, I should say, we've been founded. We've listened really carefully to our supporters as well as our critics over the years. We've learned a lot and are continuing to learn about autism spectrum disorder and the evolving needs of the autism community from the autism community. And for us, you can see this timeline about how our organization has evolved over the last 19-ish years. Next slide, please. This is our diversity, equity, access, and inclusion vision, supporting and amplifying the work that's happening within the autism community is central to what we do. And so having a strong support of DE&I, especially the access and inclusion piece, is critically important to our organization, and not something that just applies, that lives on our website, but something that is infused throughout our organization from our leadership and staff and volunteers through the programs that we support as well. Next slide, please. The numbers. So switching over to employment, Companies, we know for a fact that companies that embrace best practices for supporting and employing people with disabilities outperform their peers financially. So when we're speaking about our Workplace Inclusion Now program and speaking about employment for individuals with autism as a whole, we always like to start by saying that our approach is strongly rooted in it has to be good for business, right? We don't approach businesses because this is something that is a feel-good moment or something, a way to give back to the community. It has to be, it has to make good business decisions. It has to make good business sense. And the reason for that is we're looking for long-lasting, effective, sustainable change. And for businesses, especially those that are publicly traded, that are they're held accountable to their financial performance, to their shareholders. Having this metric right here about outperforming their peers financially is a really important one. Through Accenture in 2018, they also found that companies who engaged in inclusive hiring also achieved higher revenue, double net income, and 30% higher profit margins, as well as a bonus of staff turnover is up to 30% lower. So these are just some really good data to ground our discussion on our employment program. Next slide, please. And so now I'll pass it over to my colleague Darren, who will give a little bit, he'll give an overview on Workplace Inclusion Now, our employment program at Autism Speaks.
Thank you, Ariana. Hello, everyone. My name is Darren. I'm the Manager of Employment Initiatives at Autism Speaks, and I have the pleasure of working nationally with employers to create more inclusive work environments. And I'll be speaking a little bit about our workforce development program. So to help foster more inclusive work environments, Autism Speaks has created this program to help bridge the gap for employers, job seekers, and community members. Workforce Inclusion Now is a workforce development program aimed at creating inclusive work environments for individuals with autism and related conditions. Next slide, please. Only 20% of people with disabilities, including those with ASD, autism spectrum disorder, are employed despite having the desire to work. And WIN is our solution for that. Workplace Inclusion Now is committed to promoting an inclusive workplace culture in which not just autistic adults, but all employees can thrive. A key component of WIN is our online training courses, including several that were designed in collaboration with Virginia Commonwealth University Autism Center of Education. They are a national leader in developing knowledge and research-based practices to support individuals with autism. And each of our courses is designed to raise awareness around the differences in thinking and communication styles and to provide strategies to build more inclusive workplaces. Next slide, please. We always take a strength-based approach to employment. So individuals with ASD possess a diverse range of strengths that can make them excellent candidates for employment in various fields. And not all candidates possess these skills, just like you or I. However, some of these strengths can include attention to detail. This quality can be valuable in jobs that require precision, accuracy, and thoroughness, such as data analysis, quality control, and research. Strong memory skills. This strength can be great in roles that demand memorization, like customer service or technical support. Focused task execution in work settings. This focus can lead to increased productivity and efficiency in completing assigned tasks. Honesty and integrity, specialized knowledge and skills and expertise. So many individuals on the spectrum develop intense interest in specific subjects, which lead to a deep level of knowledge and expertise in those areas. And this knowledge can be a valuable asset in specialized fields and industries. They also can possess strong work ethic, innovation, and creativity. And by recognizing and leveraging these strengths, employers can create an inclusive work environment that not only supports individuals with ASD, but also benefits from their unique contributions to the workplace. Next slide, please. So our core elements of WIN in Action are digital trainings. So our trainings provide essentially a series of models aim to support the inclusion of people with autism and related conditions in the workplace. As I mentioned earlier, co-developed by researchers and those on the spectrum, and each course raises awareness around the differences in thinking and communication styles and provides strategies to create an inclusive workplace. We have courses available for managers, coworkers, and human resource professionals. And I will provide more information on our courses and modules shortly. Also, all of our courses are available in Spanish. Next slide, please. So our workplace review, workplace profile report is meant to identify possible barriers that applicants with autism may encounter, and if applicable, provides an in-depth job description analysis, an application process review, an environmental review, and a list of recruitment development partners. The results are then summarized and developed into a report that details the findings along with recommendations that can be implemented to augment these identified deficits and promote inclusive work environments. We also have events. WIN promotes community engagement on both the regional and national levels by conducting local outreach, and hosting pathway to employment events to help individuals with autism and related conditions gain the skills needed to secure and maintain jobs, while also supporting the employer's efforts to create working environments that are conducive to those on the spectrum. Next slide, please. So a little bit more about our trainings. We offer trainings for businesses. One of our courses include welcoming employees with autism and related conditions, which provides managers and HR professionals guidance on inclusive practices to hire, onboard, and support workers with autism and related conditions. This course covers subjects such as autism and related conditions, disclosure in the workplace, accommodations and adjustments, inclusive hiring, management, and development practices. We also have understanding coworkers with autism and related conditions, which provides your staff with guidance for working with coworkers with conditions like autism and other neurodiversities. And some of the subjects covered in this course include the benefits of an inclusive workplace, understanding differences in coworkers with autism and related conditions, and how to create an inclusive work environment for everyone. Next slide, please. We have courses available for community members. These include welcoming students with autism or post-secondary institutions. Some of the concepts covered in this course include a universal design for learning, environmental scans, different types of learning, and accessibility. We also offer supporting employees and job seekers for direct service providers. And some of the concepts covered in this course include autism and related conditions, disclosure in the workplace, accommodations and adjustments, and different ways to communicate with employers. Next slide, please. And we have digital trainings available for job seekers. Navigating your differences in the workplace. This training is for neurodiverse students, job seekers, and employees. Navigating your differences helps to build self-advocacy, which ultimately leads to better employment outcomes. And trainings are available. Trainings for job seekers are available for manufacturing environments and customer-facing positions. Concepts covered in this course include self-advocacy at the workplace, disclosure, guided scans of the workplace for potential challenges and solutions, and supports for advocating for individual needs with your employer. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, our workplace review, it is per location and can include a job description analysis, an application process review, environmental review, so scanning of the exterior and interior environment, a connection to employee development partners, and a comprehensive report review, which is done virtually. Excuse me, next slide. So some examples, pipeline connections. Autism Speaks will research and convene virtual meetings with identified partners on local and regional levels. Essentially, we are building partnerships and collaborations within the community, And then an environmental review. An example could be looking at the types of positions and the communication needed to complete a task. For an example, a manufacturing floor could be great for someone who wants less verbal communication and noise. that isn't an issue. And these are the types of things we look for when we do an environmental review. Next slide, please. And our events are Pathways to Employment event series. These are hosted periodically throughout the year, and it convenes autistic employees, employers, and community members to share knowledge about how best to close the employment gap for autistic employees. Next slide. So Win in Action, some case studies we have here in food services. In 2022, a school nutrition association was selected to pilot WIN in 3 schools, an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school. We provided the WIN digital trainings to around 100 employees, plus the workplace review that I described earlier. We selected an implementation team, which included school nutrition leaders and other leadership members. We reviewed the workplace profile report with the team, and the team implemented these recommendations in the pilot locations. We began working with sourcing partners to fill positions within the community, and the schools shared and their associations shared their stories on podcasts, at conferences, and within the state. And as of today, the program expanded beautifully. Over 800 school employees and 112 districts are enrolled in our program. And we have plans to open to all interested districts and expand and activate in the state this month. Next slide, please. And now I will turn it back over to Ariana to discuss Win in Action in manufacturing.
Sure. Thanks, Darren. So our manufacturing case study is one that is really close to our hearts. It's where we first got started in 2020 when we launched WIN. We were working at a pilot site in a rural part in the state of Iowa. And we worked to train their entire location, all of their staff, and the buy-in that we had from this family-owned business was really incredible. From the CEO all the way down to the line staff, the commitment of, not to say it was all rainbows and butterflies. There was a little hesitation at first to get started, but once we had gone through our process, we had conversations and really learned more about the environment and the culture within this manufacturing plant. It was really clear that we were onto something quite special together. And as a result of the work that we did at this pilot site in Iowa, going through the whole process as Darren laid out so eloquently earlier, we successfully hired a number of positions and are happy to say that all of the employees that have been hired through our work together are still employed at this company today. And that tells us that in the 3.5 years, that 30% turnover rate we are actively beating, or 30% less turnover rate, we are actively beating that here. Now, what our next steps for continuing with this particular company is looking at, they've got a couple of other locations that are interested in expanding the pilot. And we are excited about taking next steps to bring this program to the remainder of the sites at this company. Next slide, please. So resources, this is usually the best part of any webinar, are where can you find all of our resources. We, in addition to a national PSA that you may see from time to time or hear from time to time on radio, as well as TV and then out-of-home placements, our website is a treasure trove of information and resources, not just on employment. Obviously, as an organization, we are committed to the whole lifespan. So we have everything from newly diagnosed resources at any age, whether it's school age, early childhood, or adult. But particularly for WIN, our WIN website, and the quick way of getting there is autismspeaks.org/WIN. You can see a screenshot of our recently updated website, as well as we have a 2-sided PDF that if you're an employer or you happen to know an employer that's interested in learning more about and getting started with inclusive hiring, this is a really great resource to share with them. Next slide, please. So we'll pause here for a second. This is a fun time, especially on a virtual, on a webinar. If you want to learn more about WIN, you can scan this QR code. Or as I mentioned, you can go to autismspeaks.org/WIN, and we can drop that in the chat, Josh, if that's possible.
Yep, and I will say, just to jump in just quickly, the QR code here is for if you have a company that you're interested in talking about WIN at a scale. If you just go to the link that I'm going to drop in the chat for all other things WIN, as an individual, if you want to sign up, or as a family member, you'll have access that way as well. So I'll put that information in the chat.
Perfect, thank you. Next slide, please. And lastly, if you're familiar with Autism Speaks, you likely are also familiar with our autism response team, or we fondly refer to them as the ART team. This is our national information and referral team. They are available through Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 in all time zones through chat, email, and phone in both English and Spanish. They will answer any question in terms of if you're looking for information and resources about autism for yourself, for a loved one, as a professional, if you're looking for resources for yourself or for the individuals that you work with. And they cover the entire lifespan. So if you're looking for example, a support group in your neighborhood, if you're looking for a therapist, a specialist, our autism response team is absolutely incredible. And every year they do well over close to, I should say, 80,000 contacts a year. And they are the heart and soul of our services and supports team. Next slide. Perfect. So I'll pass things back over to the Able Today team.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ariana, Darren, Josh. I know we've had a very lively chat, which we absolutely love because you have so many questions. We're here to answer them. Josh, do you want to maybe jump in and address the last maybe couple of WIN questions from your team?
Yeah, you got it. So one of the questions that is when working with all state DVRs or in their contract service providers, we're not in every state, but we are happy to have conversations if somebody wants to open that door. Our goal, as Darren and Ariana really pointed out, is to continue to help those three areas of interest, autistic job seekers and their families. Also, working with employers to upskill and become welcome and inclusive, but then in addition, working with those VR agencies to help provide additional tools for their staff and then connect them back into the communities in which there are open opportunities to make the system work better for everyone. So happy to have that conversation. I can certainly, I'll email or message you directly with my contact information so you can follow up. And I love that, the Connecticut Walk. How do we find the WIN resources? So again, if you're an individual, you can just go to, I drop that in the chat, autismspeaks.org/WIN, W-I-N. And then you can select your area of interest. So there's one for employers. So if you're an employer, there's one for job seekers. That's also job seekers and families. And then there's one for community, which would include those VR agencies and so forth. And from there, you can make an account and register for trainings. You can take any of the trainings that Darren had mentioned. There's several others out there. There's also videos out there from autistic employees and other resources. There's free toolkits for employment. So all those things are available. You just register, you can poke around, kick the tires, get some more information, and then again, share. And if you are a business where you're thinking about training the entirety of the workforce, that's where that form on that site will come in. Fill out that information, and Sarah from our team would reach back out to you. Not the Sarah on this call, but a different Sarah, and we'd be happy to get in touch. And I'll drop the link for that WIN PDF in the chat. I see that's a question coming in. And school, okay, so that's a great question. So within Georgia, how do we find, so specifically in Georgia in the WIN program, as we add more, we roll more of those informations out, and we'll connect directly into the community to get that information out at a regionalized level. Sarah, I'm going to turn it over because I think there's so much good information too on ABLE. There's still one left in the chat, more so of a question. I don't know if you see that from an attendee of like really around the receipt and the bookkeeping around ABLE.
Absolutely. Stacy, do you want to just address that from a high level on what we encourage individuals and family and caregivers to do when it comes to keeping and maintaining receipts and records?
Yeah, so when I'm explaining this, I generally tell people to think about, we fall under IRS regulations, right? So you want to think in terms of IRS and when you're doing your taxes and those types of things. So that kind of record keeping you want to make sure you keep. Sometimes you could have, people don't always have exactly a receipt, depending on what they're purchasing. So just having some sort of paper trail, sometimes that might be your bank statement and you can just say this is, you can see the stores on there and what you've spent. So it's not always, it has to be the exact receipt for everything. So just kind of keep that in mind and think more again along the lines of IRS and taxes when you're documenting things.
Thank you, Stacy. One other similar question that we had in the chat during today's webinar, Betty Ann, maybe you could jump in and address this, is just some of the state and federal tax, either consequences or benefits of an ABLE account. Would you address that for the audience?
Absolutely. So in terms of taxes, there were some questions that said, will I be taxed on this money, the earnings for this money, while it's in the account or when it comes out? And the answer is, as long as when it comes out of the ABLE account, it's spent on what is considered a qualified disability expense, there are no tax penalties for the person. And while it's in the ABLE account, different from you or I who have to claim income on our income tax for earnings, a person with an ABLE account does not have to claim those interest or dividends that they're earning on their ABLE account when filing state or federal income taxes. I think sometimes when we talk about tax benefits, people think too that there is a federal tax benefit. The federal tax benefit is you don't have to pay dividend, you don't have to pay taxes on the earnings. There is no standard deduction or thing that you can take on the federal side of this. On the state side, it's going to vary from state to state. In some states, it's a limited amount of contributions for the person who's making contributions to an ABLE account that can be subtracted from their gross income before taxes are assessed. For some states, it's everything you put into an ABLE account can come off of your income or taxes. So it's going to depend on the individual state that you have an account in, if they have a state tax benefit, and B, how that state tax benefit is defined. When there is something called a non-qualified disability expense, there is a federal tax and potentially state tax penalty, and that is on the earnings. We know that for a federal tax penalty, it will be taxes on the 10% penalty on the amount of the earnings and taxes on the earnings if it's not spent on a qualified disability expense. And you might say, how would that ever come out? The way that that comes out is if you are subjected to an IRS tax audit where they're looking at what this money was used for. So while we have to tell you that, I also want you to put into context, if you're subject to an IRS tax audit, in fact, this will be looked at, and only then would there be federal taxes imposed.
That's great. So sorry, Sarah, I was just going to jump in. I see a couple other filtering through, and friends, we'll stay on. We talked about this. If there's still questions coming in, we can stay on for a few more minutes because we want to make sure we get as many questions answered as possible. So I'll take the WIM one first, just because it's going to be a quick answer. Absolutely, yes. I'll drop my email in there for you, and we'd love to collaborate and connect more about how to utilize some of those volunteer hours with resume and interviewing and those types of skills. So love to talk to more about that and to see how we might collaborate on that. And so I'll drop my contact in there. And then Sarah, it looks like there was a question about transferring funds from 529, so forth. So I don't know if you want to pick up on that one.
Absolutely, Josh. And I'm so glad that somebody asked this question because of the hard work of Autism Speaks and many other disability national organizations. In 2017, we expanded the opportunity for an individual who receives a diagnosis of autism and other qualifying disabilities, I should say, you are allowed to transfer your traditional 529 into an ABLE account without any penalty. That was a follow-on provision to the original ABLE Act in 2017. So that is certainly allowable. We just encourage everyone, depending on the amount of resources that are in that 529, you are still confined to the $18,000. So if there's more than $18,000 in your 529, you would have to roll that over the course of a couple of calendar years. But that's a great question. It was really some of the concerns that were raised through the leadership of Autism Speaks and many advocates that helped us encourage Congress to follow on and create that additional benefit for individuals.
Great. And it looks like there's one about ABLE accounts and ABLE. This is so great. This is why we have the knowledge bank here from ABLE today. What is the difference, Sarah or team, from these ABLE account and an ABLE IRA?
Betty Ann, do you want to talk about ABLE accounts versus, other financial tools?
Sure, Sarah. ABLE accounts are non-countable assets when looking at asset and means tested benefits. If you're looking at other kinds of accounts, IRAs, you're looking at certificates of deposit, you're looking at retirement accounts, you're looking at all those other things, then it is a countable asset. The only other tool right now that people typically might use to protect assets would be a special needs trust. And there are different types of special needs trusts, and there are some different rules about what you can spend them on that are different from what you can use an ABLE account for. And access to an ABLE account tends to be much more readily accessible, but we acknowledge these are both tools in a toolkit and oftentimes need to work together. Oftentimes we find that there are people who may have received a large inheritance, who've opened a special needs trust or maybe settlement from a lawsuit, and then they transfer money on a periodic basis from that special needs trust to their ABLE account for easier access.
The great answer, Betty Ann. Another great one we have just on kind of the day-to-day operational side of having an ABLE account. Stacy, does it make sense to use ABLE as a main focal point bank account for the individual with a disability, regardless of whether expenses are not for qualified disability expenses, which I think under ABLE you'd be hard pressed if not be able to correlate something back to improving the quality of life for the individual. But do you want to tackle that question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and so a lot of state plans, have several different investment options, like a bank account, or a prepaid card if they don't have the bank account, because we do want to make it, if that works into that person's goals, then they can use it for in that way. Sorry. So yes, if that was something that you wanted to do, that would be an option for you. And like Sarah said, there aren't a lot of things that fall under the non-qualified disability expenses. If you did spend something on something that was considered a non-qualified disability expense, there could be some tax consequences with that. So just so you're aware of those implications. But yes, absolutely, you can use it just like a regular checking account.
Can I clarify for a second? If the question was about, should I just have a regular bank account versus an ABLE account, I think we want to make sure that you understand that if that's the question versus how Stacy described, there are bank account kind of options within some programs. If you only have a bank account and you don't have an ABLE account that it is a part of, it's just a bank account, it is a countable asset. If it's in the ABLE account, it's not a countable asset. So I just want to make sure people got that correctly, because Stacy, you're absolutely right. Many of our plans have programs with checking accounts or things like that. However, that's different than just having a checking account at a bank and just putting the money in that.
Absolutely, yes. And it is also important to note that if you're receiving Social Security, there are a couple state plans where it could be direct deposited into an ABLE account, but most states you can't do that. So you would need that outside checking account to deposit your Social Security, and then you could move it over to your ABLE account.
I noticed, Sarah, that there's a question about debit cards and statements. So depending on the plan that you're looking at, some plans have debit cards, true debit cards that are like a Visa card, can use in an ATM, can use to purchase things. And so that's one version. Some states have what Stacy referred to as a prepaid card. That card is not limitless. It doesn't have full access to the money in the account. It only has access to the money that is loaded on the card for use. In the case of that prepaid card, there is a separate statement, like a Visa card statement. And we do have people who use that statement as their receipt, if you will, or reference to how that money was spent. So I just wanted to let folks know, because there were some questions about credit cards, debit cards, prepaid cards. I know we've used all of those words. Both the prepaid and the debit cards are issued as a Visa card. The difference is one is more like a gift card with a set limit that you can add to whenever you want. The other has full access to the monies in the ABLE account.
It's a great clarification that I was just processing as you were going through, Betty Ann. So thanks for clarifying that. And there's a handful of questions I'm going to lump into kind of one quick answer. The first answer, is there an age limit for WIN? There is not, and it's not related to a school district. So I think that might have been some of the confusion coming through. The program that Darren was highlighting is one of the places in which we've implemented workplace inclusion now, which are school districts in a particular state. So that's one area in which they've been implemented. We've also worked with private employers in manufacturing, or private employers in finance, or in many other industries. So WIN overall as a program, and then the next piece of that was, can it be accessed by a disabled person who's out of the district? Of course, we want all folks to access this training. It's readily available out on the website. And then lastly, so no age limit to WIN. Confusion about WIN. Is it for individuals, autistic individuals and so forth? Who's it for? It's actually a three-pronged approach. So Darren and I's primary role is to work with employers on a national level to help get them trained and ready to employ autistic adults and others with related conditions. So that's one area in which WIN is activated, is that employer side demand, right? So let's say that an employer comes to us and say, hey, we want to have a neurodiversity hiring program. How do we do that? We're going to jump in, provide them the technical expertise and training support to make sure that they're ready to hire autistic individuals. Then we're going to go back into that community, connect them with their state VR agencies, other home and community-based providers, to make sure that they have a good sourcing partner and connection back into the jobs that they're looking for. And then lastly, in concert with autistic individuals and researchers and others, there's courses that have been developed for autistic individuals that they can take to help maybe do scans of their environment, learn more about their environment, and how to better self-advocate for themselves. So I hope that clears it up. If not, you can certainly visit autismspeaks.org/win. And if it's still, you have questions, there's an email out there that you can drop us an email. More happy to help as much as we can.
Thank you, Josh. I think two other, quick ABLE questions that we could address. Stacy, do you want to talk about, for ABLE accounts, what is considered a non-disability? I think we mean disability qualified expense. Do you want to address that?
Yeah, so there's not, like we talked about earlier, there's not a whole lot of things that don't qualify. Some of the examples that I like to give when I'm talking about it are possibly gambling. If you're doing lots of gambling, that would probably not be a qualified disability expense. Smoking, though some people might argue that smoking improves their quality of life. So, but things like that, buying, maybe, I like to give examples of like birthday gifts, right? So if you're going to a party for your 4-year-old nephew and you want to buy him a gift because you're going to a party, and it's rude to go to a party without a gift for a 4-year-old, right? So you may want to buy a small gift and bring it. But if that nephew turns 16 and you buy him a car, that might be getting into some territory where maybe that's not a qualified disability expense. So I hope that kind of helps clear things up. Like we said, there's not tons of things that aren't covered. And I hope that helps.
Thank you, Stacy. Betty Ann, I also see you're responding to this, but do you want to talk, and we have the slide up here, so I think it's perfect. Do you want to talk about the investment options associated with having an ABLE account?
Absolutely. So plans have differing options for investments depending on the state that you're working with. And they have different options versus checking, savings, or possibly both. There was a question earlier about FDIC. I believe all of our plans have an FDIC insured option. That's typically that checking savings option, which is just like your bank account, insured up to $250,000 by the FDIC insurance plan. Investments, however, are preset portfolios. I think sometimes people who've had experience in the college savings world are used to a little bit more being able to select exactly, I want to buy Amazon stock and I want to buy Apple stock and things like that as part of their portfolio. Within the ABLE plan, our programs have packaged investment portfolios to offer to our account holders in a way that helps them begin this process of investment in a world where many people previously have not had that experience. So you will see some very low risk investment portfolios that have ranges from very, very conservative, mostly stocks and bonds and very little stock, to mostly stock and very little in bonds or lower risk options combined. So in the ABLE space, people don't have full range of selecting exactly which stock they want to invest in, but they do have the ability to check out the portfolios that are offered. We all have program disclosure booklets on our website, and in that program disclosure booklet, you will see exactly what makes up each portfolio for that plan.
I think maybe, Sarah, maybe time for one or two more questions. And then I do want to, we will answer all the questions. And one of the questions was, will we send out the Q&A portion of this piece? So Sarah can talk to that. The last one I just want to take off the board for WIN. How can I get my son signed up into WIN? You can go out to our website. Again, that'll link it directly in. But I want to make sure we're setting expectations too. So WIN isn't necessarily where Autism Speaks is going to directly contact your, sons or daughters with a position or a job. That digital training is one resource. There's employment toolkits for your son or daughter. And then as we work in other states, we will publicly say, hey, we're working with these employers. These are the positions they have open. We'll start to do some soft recruiting in those states. So while we may not be in your area, that does not mean that they can't access the digital trainings. We really want them to do that. And then again, if there's anything else that we can try to help with, you can also email us off the website. So Sarah, I'll turn it back over to you. Maybe we'll wrap up with a few housekeeping pieces, and then I know we would stay on all day and chat, but I think, our colleagues probably need to have some other work to get done at some point, right?
I think this just speaks volumes, Josh, to the importance of the information and the collaboration between ABLE Today, our ABLE programs, and Autism Speaks. Absolutely. So a few housekeeping items. We will be publishing today's webinar on our websites. We will also email out the recording to all attendees and all that registered for today's webinar, along with a PDF version of our slide deck. We want you to have this content and this information. So look for that email from our team shortly, and we will get that out. We've dropped in the chat all of our contact information for Autism Speaks and ABLE Today, and we're happy to talk offline about any particular questions that you may have that weren't addressed in today's webinar. And we look forward to the next time. And certainly huge thanks and kudos to the Autism Speaks team for their ongoing collaboration, for pushing for more inclusion in the workplace. We certainly know we have a lot more work to do. And from the ABLE Today perspective, we look forward to answering all your questions and helping support you and your ongoing efforts. So thank you all. We hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.
Sarah, can I say one more thing? It's kind of a disclaimer. Earlier, when I was talking about employer contributions and income, if the employer's contribution or bonus or whatever is made through the account holder's gifting platform, it is not counted as income. But if it's made just as a part of the employment earnings, it is considered as income. So I just wanted to put that disclosure out there. I don't think I talked about the gifting platform kind of precluding that from being considered income. So sorry to jump in, but I was just reflecting on what I said earlier today. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty Ann, and thank you all. We'll be in touch shortly and appreciate your time today.
Thanks, everyone.
Are we going to hang on for a few minutes, Sarah, after everybody's off?
I need to run. I ended the recording. I think everybody dropped off.
Okay.
Thank
I thought
you.
it went pretty well. Hey, Eric, I saw you pop in.